Inside this box, I've got something incredibly rare, something that Apple attempted but failed to destroy. I have gotten my hands on one of the only Apple Silicon developer transition kits still in existence, the iPad that ran macOS before the M1 came to light. We are going to tear it down, we are going to benchmark it up, and we're going to see if it can game. Are you game? You may recall that 2020 was a wild year, and we wondered how Apple would do a live keynote in a world stuck under quarantine. The answer? Well, no live keynote, a shift to pre-recorded, highly produced, very concise events that we still see today, more than 4 years later. The event started with iOS 14, showing off its new home screen widgets and app library. The iPad, the Apple Watch, and tvOS were updated technically, but neglected as is typical, and macOS was said to be receiving its biggest update ever. Big Sur, as it was so dubbed, announced an entirely new visual design, the first time in 6 years that macOS got a fresh coat of paint. There was a brand new control center, widget support, a new messages app, revamped Safari, and more. Heck, Big Sur was the first version that moved away from the macOS 10 version numbering system that had been used for 20 years to macOS 11. It was a big deal, and it would have been a big year for the Mac with just Big Sur alone. But boy, was Big Sur not alone, as just moments later, Tim Cook would say this.
And now it's time for a huge leap forward for the Mac. Because today is the day we're announcing that the Mac is transitioning to our own Apple Silicon.
Johnny Srouji, Apple's SVP of Hardware Technologies, takes the stage to explain the paradigm shift that Apple Silicon will cause in the industry. That it will bring class-leading performance per watt, yielding better battery life and better thermals than ever before. That a shift to an SoC can permit coprocessors to maximize software-defined hardware performance, like a neural engine for ML or video engines for encoding and decoding. But most importantly of all, Apple shows that not only have they ported all of their apps easily to Apple Silicon, but so have Microsoft and Adobe. That tools in Xcode and using the new SwiftUI declarative framework can make the move to Apple Silicon a piece of cake for developers. Of course, they do announce the arrival of Rosetta 2, an incredible ARM translator for x86 compiled apps that don't get ported, and they even publicize that Macs will be gaining the ability to run any iPad app under the sun because it is effectively an iPad. But it's clear that these are merely bridges to aid in a real transition to native ARM binaries. And at the end of the keynote, they announce this, a developer transition kit. A Mac Mini with the iPad Pro's A12Z processor inside that select developers will be able to buy for $500 on the condition that they do not say anything about them and that they send them back to Apple whenever Apple asks for them back for $0 in return. And guess what? Apple did ask for all of them back. They were supposed to be destroyed, but Collin of macOS patcher fame found one and sent it to me to show to you. And here it is! Okay, this is somewhat of a fraudulent experience because despite all these stickers and labels that might suggest this is a prototype box, no, this is just a 2018 Mac Mini box. Not special at all. The DTK survived, but I guess not the package in which it shipped. There were a few cool little things if you were a developer. This little, information packet came with a little insert that said the future of the Mac is yours to write, and there was instructions on how developers could get started with Apple Silicon. Kind of a cute little nod, but yeah, we don't care about the box. This is what we care about. Well, yeah. Looks like a Mac Mini. In fact, it even says Mac Mini on the bottom. It doesn't say developer transition kit. I will say this thing is already fingerprinted to high heaven, but I do like the space gray. I've always been a diehard silver guy. That's never going to change. I always pick silver when given the option between silver and black, but this is kind of cool. Space gray Mac Mini that runs Apple Silicon. And you can tell it runs Apple Silicon because the I/O is really quite wimpy. When people found out that this was the DTK, people were like, oh, well, surely they're going to add more stuff when the real M1 ships. Nope. This is the same thing that shipped on the M1. You get two USB-As, you get a headphone jack out, you have HDMI out, you've got two Thunderbolt 3 ports, gigabit Ethernet, and your power. And that's it. Even though this faceplate matches the M1 Mac Mini, this thing right here is a lie. This Thunderbolt logo, yeah, not true. This thing does not have Thunderbolt. And, well, I think to prove that to you, we need to take it apart. And taken apart are the tassels from my rug, which have been munched by years of robot vacuums. But no longer, thanks to today's sponsor, Narwhal, and their new Frio Z Ultra. Its dual RGB cameras and dedicated AI NPU offer sub 5mm precision, making it the best obstacle avoidance system that I've ever tested. The bot doesn't just dodge the tassels from my rug, but also cables, other small objects, and yes, even gross pet messes. It has avoided my cat's vomit. Narwhal's Smart AI DirtSense 2.0 uses this vision system to distinguish between wet and dry messes, automatically switching between vacuuming or mopping mid-task and then spot cleaning until it determines that that area is spotless, only then to continue on with the planned cleaning schedule. Its navigation capabilities are second to none, but it doesn't stop there. With 12,000 pascals of industry-leading suction, it picks up all type of debris while remaining shockingly quiet. I mean, I legit run cleaning rounds in the middle of the night while we are asleep, and that's not something I've been able to do with any other robot vacuum. And the Zero Tangle brush, well, it's perfect for pet owners because those bristles do actually pick up hair from carpets, which cannot be said of full rubber brushes. What's more, the base station applies real, deliciously scented cleaning solution to the mop pads that leaves your floors sparkling and smelling great. And if you splurge for their automatic water exchange system, you'll never find yourself filling up fresh or emptying out stinky wastewater. This is easily one of the best robot vacuums that I've ever used. It is now my primary home robot vacuum, and I love it. Check out the Narwhal Frio Z Ultra using the link below to save at checkout. I need a spudger! There you go. All right, Mac Mini. No delicate markings on the bottom here. Yeah, that would have been, and that was the only way in which you could get space gray, by the way, because everybody knows that gray is the most professional color. That is how you could get that enclosure. So they're literally just using a standard off-the-shelf enclosure. I wouldn't be surprised if this serial number is a complete fraud and it doesn't actually mean anything. LTTstore.com. I need my commission, Linus. The payments are late. Aha, very nice. And we've got the connector here. Excuse the phone call. I'm getting on my humane pin I haven't touched in 3 months. Shut up! So let's push this forward a little bit. There we go. And then we pull this power cable out, which is always at an awkward angle. Come on, buddy. Don't be a pain in the booty. There we are. And we can just pull straight out. Aha! Look at that. The DTK. Yeah, well, that's crazy. Look at that PCB. That might be the thinnest PCB I've ever seen Apple use. Apple always uses very thick PCBs, but this one is not that. Look, there's like a literal crease in it. It's sloped, probably from heat and from warping. That's wild. And look how empty it is. I mean, the whole like last quarter of the board has nothing on it. This was the exact same size as the Intel board, probably because they wanted to use all the same standoffs and mounts and whatever, so they just made a little thin PCB that's incredibly sparsely populated. I love the Mac Mini speaker. Look at this thing. It's so tiny. It's this little tiny ported thing with this little tiny woofer right there. And I mean, in theory, you need a speaker to make a boot chime and all that stuff, but you can actually use this as a controlled speaker output. And it's the worst. When you're hooked up to a display without like a monitor or something and you unplug your headphones, it will play audio through the world's worst speaker inside of this like Fort Knox Mac Mini chassis. It is just completely inaudible and sounds like mud. It is very, very bad. Collin offered to sell it to me for $1,500. So if I break it, well, I'll lose $1,500, which I don't really want to lose. Nope. I couldn't figure it out then either. Oh. I don't know. It's probably the 4 massive screws on the bottom. I didn't even need to watch my video. I just needed to use my brain. Yeah. Dear viewer, that was the problem. My brain. Okay. Let's pull this off. I'm going to keep this little black goopy paste on because it's weird Apple paste that you can't find anywhere else. But, holy crap. Does the SoC not have any markings on it at all? It doesn't. Yeah, there are no markings on this SoC at all. But surely enough, it is an A12Z. There might not be markings because this could be its like a custom internal heat spreader with the memory over here, because you might recall the original iPad Pro that this shipped in, which would have been the 2018 iPad Pro, no, 2020, only had 6 gigs of memory. This has 16. That's a lot more. So they've added that right here, but yeah, everything else makes sense. I mean, you got your 2 NAND flash modules right here. It ships with 512 gigs, so that means these are 256 apiece. You've got all your VRMs and MOSFETs and power and voltage control, which makes sense because your power input is right there. You got your MOSFET batteries, which again, we'll talk about briefly. This is probably a little Faraday cage to surround the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth modules. Yep, because that's where the antenna, oh yeah, hello. The antenna's right there, boom, boom, boom. So that's definitely what that is. And then, what the heck? Oh, you guys. Okay. Oh, wow, okay. All right, hold on. Look at this. So right here at the back of the machine, there are little contacts. You can just bridge these with a screwdriver or whatever you want. This was probably when they were testing this platform internal to Apple on the bench. So you've got just little contacts here that you can short to force DFU mode, power the device on and off, and do a PMU reset. But look at this. What the heck is this? Okay, look at this. Right here, you've got a bunch more testing contacts. Many of them are unlabeled, so it's possible that these were just never used. These are just empty pads. But you've got stuff like Droop, HDMI FET-EN, 3 volt, 5 volt, 3 volt, 5 volt, and you'll notice that one of the main input voltage headers has been cut with what looks like a Dremel tool. This is a way to destroy something to prevent it from working. So my assumption is that Apple got these back when they asked for them back. They had some guy that was dremeling the side out of them, and then they probably send them to a recycler in China where Collin was able to find one of these and buy them. The problem is broken. That's the whole point. They break them on purpose. But you can't outsmart a smart guy, and look at this. So he ground the board down, probably with another Dremel or something like that, to the point where you can see the bare copper on the board, and he's traced this stuff together. Probably, this looks like kind of like a solder flux paste a little bit. But yeah, he reestablished the electrical connection to get around Apple disabling it by taking a Dremel to those pins. I wanted to show you that, yeah, of course this thing doesn't have Thunderbolt, and the proof is right here in the pudding. On the Mac Mini, in the 2018 Mac Mini, you have these massive Thunderbolt controllers right here, and you can see them, and there are clearly none right here. You've just got your USB controller, and that's all she wrote. So these were only capable of 10 gigabits per second USB 3.2 Gen 2, 5, 4, 7, whatever the heck it's called, 10 gigabits per second USB 3. It wouldn't be Thunderbolt capable until the official M1 shipped months later. But that's the inside of the board. Oh yeah, MOSFET batteries. So there are none right here. And that's a problem because that means every single time we boot the machine up, the clock is just unavailable. It's at midnight every time. You have to go into the settings and set the date and time manually. And then once you do that, then you can finally access the web. Otherwise you get HTTPS errors. It's a whole thing. But you might be wondering, 3 MOSFET batteries, that seems like a ton. Well, yeah, that's because the SMC for this SoC, it was never designed to be in a Mac. It was designed to run on an iPad, which had this huge lithium-ion battery available to it all the time. And even when your iPhone shuts down, when it hits 1%, it's still got enough power in it to last weeks, months without being recharged before you have, like, you know, SMC and clock issues. And well, this doesn't, because it's just a Mac. And so there were 3 button cell batteries that worked in tandem. And even with all 3 of those, the clock battery only lasted 6 months. Coincidentally, the same length of the program. So this is a shoddy way to get around it, but Apple figures, yeah, the batteries will be dead in 6 months. It'll be a pain in the butt to replace them, but in 6 months, we're gonna have them back because the Apple Silicon M1 will have already shipped. I mean, I guess if it works, they'll knock it. All right, let's put this thing back together. There are other weird oddities surrounding the SMC. One of them is that as soon as you plug it in, are you ready? The machine automatically boots. The power button is effectively non-functional. It is wired up. You can force reset the computer by holding it down, but it just instantly reboots. If this thing is plugged in, it is turned on, doesn't shut off. The other thing I also immediately notice is that the fan is spinning at 100%. It spins at 100% all the time. There is no fan control on this SMC with this specific SoC. But because the Mac Mini is so quiet, it doesn't really matter. Well, no, you can hear it. You can hear it. Okay, the other thing that's weird is it takes quite a long time to boot. And I don't know if you saw that boot process. It flashes stuff over and over and over again, and it's quite weird. There's also some graphical shenanigans that go on up until the operating system is kind of loaded up and ready to go. This is clearly not intended for mass consumption. Okay, because this device doesn't have Thunderbolt, you might notice that our monitor looks kind of sad. We don't have the ability to run a 5K display or Pro Display XDR, so we're just running a regular 4K monitor, and the scaling is set so that it looks good for YouTube. And this also isn't the world's best monitor, so it could be that. But check it out, we can run it at 120 hertz. Gamer! Yeah! Wow, that's cool. Apple Silicon supports gamer. Look at this. Whoa. You won't be able to tell because this video is only 30 FPS, but that is smooth. Okay. But here's the weirdest thing of all, perhaps. Where the M1, just months after this thing shipped out to developers, would come to support the ARM version 8.5 instruction set, and the A14, which came out around the same time, supported 4K memory pages, the A12Z, a multi-year-old iPad chip at this point, just didn't. So there's a ton of apps natively compiled for Apple Silicon that just do not work. I can try to open Cinebench 2024, and eventually, when it tries to open, it'll just crash. Doesn't work. ISAs are missing. Okay. You can run basically any x86 app inside of Rosetta because Rosetta did ship on this build, which is great. But that's not really a great measure of performance of a chip that nobody has anymore and nobody really publicly benchmarked to begin with. So let's run one of the few benchmarks that does actually function, Cinebench R23. This is natively compiled for Apple Silicon, and it does work. And we will prove it by running the multi-core benchmark. Did it? Okay. That's not encouraging. Hey, okay, that's not bad. It's not great. It's not great. It is done. And, wow, yeah, not amazing. 3,992 points. If we find this WCCF benchmark for multi-core, we will see that the M1 ended up shipping just 6 months later with 7,508 points. So this is roughly 60% of the performance of what would be M1. Not great. One thing that I did find that's kind of interesting and kind of cool is that the App Store seems to function just fine. We were able to download Final Cut Pro, no problem. It shows me the apps that I've previously purchased. This is a little weird. Apple TV. You're like, oh, this should work, right? Let's play the first episode of this Apple TV show. You see the splash screen, and then, yeah, looking good, looking good. And then it quits back to the desktop, because guess what? DRM'd content is not supported on the Apple Developer Transition Kit. Okay. Let's move to another benchmark. Let's try an old, tried and true classic, Geekbench 5. Let's run a CPU benchmark. Okay, the benchmark is completed. There's a very loud truck outside. Sorry, bear with us. In the next month, we're going to be in a new office that's much quieter than this one, so stay tuned. But for right now, put up with it. Don't complain, okay? We've got 1,132 on the single-core score, 4,365 on multi-core, but the thing about the Geekbench browser is that it only shows Geekbench 6 results. So we have to go to the Internet Archive back to the year 2021 and find out where this ranks relative to other stuff. So 1,132 is pretty good. I mean, other than the very latest generation of Intel processors that Apple shipped with, the 9th and 10th gen Core i5s and i7s, it's right in line with that. And then if we go to multi-core, well, it's going to get smashed in multi-core. 4,365. Ooh, we're going way down the list. Ooh, way down the list. Okay, so it barely edges out the 2015 iMac running an i7 6700K, yikes. But it's slightly worse than the mid-2017 Intel i7 7700K. Okay, so this is 7th gen Intel performance. Not excellent, but again, this is drawing, this might even draw less than the freaking M1 does, because this is in an iPad. This could be like a 5-watt chip for all we know. I'll tell you what, this thing is like bone cold. That's partially because the fan runs nonstop all the time. Okay, these are synthetic benchmarks, but let's try a real world thing that we can compare against a real world Apple Silicon computer that we have access to now. That is Final Cut Pro. Okay, so I'm here in Final Cut and I'm pretty impressed. I mean, this is scrubbing just fine. You can even hear through the speaker. That's full volume. What a fantastic speaker. I'm gonna mute that. Okay, yeah, we've got, okay, this is a ProRes clip. This is a Red Raw clip, so this should be quite a bit more difficult for it to play through, but that seems just fine. Hold on. Are we at, no. Yeah, we were in better performance. If we put the player back to better quality, this is gonna slow it down. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, modern Apple Silicon machines can chug through red footage pretty much like it's nothing. Yeah, that's not great. That's a multi-year-old iPad chip. But, I mean, it's competent. It could do it. Let's see how fast it exports everything. So we're going to go here. Video only, ProRes 422, go. And 0%, 1%. All right, not shabby, but here's how it compares to an M1 Max Mac Studio and M3 Max MacBook Pro. Yeah, Apple's gotten much better at this over the years, but not all hope is lost because we still have video games. Here's the thing, Steam? Yeah, Steam brokey. It does not work. That is presumably for this version of Steam, which is still running in compatibility mode. It's using Rosetta, even the modern version of Steam. There is no ARM binary available. However, I tried to find a couple of older versions of Steam and just nothing works. I cannot get this thing to open. It bounces infinitely forever and ever more. So I thought, well, we don't need Steam. The App Store has games now, right? Right? Yeah. We got Resident Evil. We got Death Stranding. Yeah, well, none of those games are compatible with this version of macOS. So then I thought, well, let's just go back to the classic Tomb Raider. We've got the original and we've got Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which I only owned on Steam that I think I got as part of a humble bundle for $5. Well, it's available for sale for $50-something on the App Store, and I bought it because I'm a chump. And when we press open, well, that's not great news. Unexpectedly quit, but it's okay. Hey, nice. Okay, so let's see. We've got ooh, that is chuggy 1080p. Run it in a window. Now let's just run it full screen. Okay, and push play. And this is promising. Hey, oh. This crashes halfway through the launcher. Hold on. Let's try this again. Maybe we run it windowed instead of full screen. Maybe that's the problem, huh? Probably not, but let's try. Let's just bump it down to like a really, really low resolution. Like a 720p. that didn't even get 1 second in, at least before we got a couple seconds in. Okay, what if I run at 720p full screen? That'll work. Let's even let you show the dock. The dock can stay. Let's try every combination possible. Well, looks like running at 1080p full screen was our best bet. I tried to install GOG Galaxy because I thought, well, I own The Witcher 3. That's available on the Mac through GOG Galaxy. I downloaded GOG Galaxy, and similarly to Steam, it just doesn't open. Yeah, so this thing kind of sucks. Here's the thing, though. It doesn't just suck in 2024 for a guy who's not a developer. It sucked for developers, too. There were many, many complaints that you could find from any developer that had these, that there were tons of bugs, that it would randomly kernel panic. And we've seen that. The operating system just craps the bed and reboots the whole machine. Bluetooth is wildly problematic, which kind of is still true with Apple Silicon today. But yeah, developers had a bad time with this thing. It just was not very good. And because it wasn't using the same instruction set that would ship with the M1 just a few months later that year, any dev that got this kind of just felt like their time was wasted. Apple exercised their return policy pretty quickly. There was an agreement that within 1 year, Apple would ask for them back, and well, they asked for them back in fewer than 6 months. Now, part of that is because the M1 shipped, and the M1, when it came out, was obviously a fantastic machine. It was hyper-stable, it was significantly faster than the DTK. No dev, when the M1 came out, would seriously continue to use the DTK. But these developers did pay for these machines. They paid $500 for the opportunity to borrow one of these for 1 year. And then Apple, after just a few months, goes, give that back. Go buy an M1. Devs go, well, I mean, we gave you the money. And so Apple says, fine, we'll give you $200 towards the purchase of an M1. Like, I can't believe anybody thought that was a good idea. That is insulting. These are people that are building apps for your brand new platform that you want them to bring their applications to your platform. They give you $500 for a crappy, buggy beta product that has been miserable for months. And then you say, give it back sooner than we said we wanted it back. And also, here's $200. Good day, sir. Yeah, no, it was ridiculous. And so there was enough hubbub and everybody got mad enough that Apple was like, fine. We'll give you your $500 back if you send us back the DTK, which you had to do, and in exchange, well, we'll give you that towards not just the M1, but anything you want to buy in the Apple Store. And of course, most developers went out and bought an M1 because they were fantastic. And boy, after having used this, I'm glad the M1 was as good as it was, because if you had given me this back in June of 2020, I would have been like, Intel's not so shabby. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.